Hello everyone and welcome to Of God in Mind, and today we're going to be continuing our walk through Acts. We're in Acts chapter 2 now, and I'll just read that out for us. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. This is the apostles. Suddenly a sound like the blowing of a violent wind came from heaven and filled the whole house where they were sitting. They saw what seemed to be tongues of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them. Now there were staying in Jerusalem God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. When they heard this sound, a crowd came together in bewilderment, because each one heard their own language being spoken. Utterly amazed, they asked, "Aren't all these who are speaking Galileans? Then how is it that each of us hears them in our native language? Parthians, Medes, Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt and parts of Libya near Cyrene, visitors from Rome, both Jews and converts to Judaism, Cretans, Arabs. We hear them declaring the wonders of God in our own tongues." Amazed and perplexed, they asked each other, "What does this mean?" Some, however, made fun of them and said, "They have had too much wine." Alright, so this will be a bit of a background one essentially. I'm going to explain a few things from this passage. So, first off, the day of Pentecost. Pentecost was a harvest festival in the Jewish calendar. It's since come to talk about this event in a lot of Christian sort of jargon. But at the time it was a Jewish feast, Jewish festival, and the apostles still followed all the Jewish feasts and so forth, and they were all together having this feast. But then we have this intrusion of this great force, the blowing of a violent wind, come from heaven, filling the whole house where they were sitting, so some big powerful event. And then they see what seems to be tongues of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. Again, more description. If you don't know, a tongue of fire is like when you got the fire, you got the individual flames, and then the little flickering, sort of pointy-looking bits. Not actually pointy, but you know what I mean. Each individual little stroke of fire rising up is a tongue of fire. So here they're describing this miraculous event where you've got hurricane winds filling this whole house. Great fire spreading, coming down from heaven and separating, and it rests on each of them. And then importantly in number 4, it says it fills them with the Holy Spirit, which is an important distinction because when you read through the Old Testament, the Holy Spirit doesn't fill people until after Jesus. It rests on them, empowers them, but it doesn't come within them, which is something that only through Jesus' cleansing, through the sacrifice at the cross, that can actually happen to us. So then we have them begin to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them. So the tongues here, in Greek, the words, I think you can see my highlighting. I'll make it, okay, I need an account. Anyway, it's that word there. If you can't see the highlighting, I'll circle it. It means tongue. It also just colloquially means language and word. Like we've got it, that root. It's glosses. So it's a word we use in glossary later on, and the use of tongue is still in some of our older phrases. So mother tongue instead of mother, like your language of birth and so forth. So when the Bible speaks of tongues, it's not necessarily speaking of this sort of more Pentecostal type idea of an angelic language, a special language. In my opinion, most of the time it's just talking about a real world language like we see here, because we see in this next bit. So lots of Jews from all over the Roman world had been coming to Jerusalem for this feast, for Pentecost, and obviously they come and they heard this great commotion, this hurricane wind, and came together to come see what was going on. And then each one of them had heard these disciples, these men from this little town in northern Israel. I might bring up my map now. So Galilee is a small town. Oops, I can't zoom anymore. A small town up around here. That little blue dot there is the Sea of Galilee. Down there you've got the Dead Sea, and it was essentially well, it wasn't super small. It was a sort of medium-sized fishing town on the side of Galilee. Definitely nothing compared to Jerusalem, for example, the big capital city. So they hear these sort of country bumpkins all speaking in like 12 different languages here. We've got people from all over the Greek Roman world here, and that's pretty amazing to them. So you've got the Parthians speaking Balava. The Parthians were sort of a new tribe that had come in. They later formed the I think it's the Sassanid Persian Empire. It's the one as Rome was falling. It's in this section here on Rome, Regnum Parthicum, the kingdom of Parthia. Not actually owned by Rome, but you have Jews from that region speaking Palavar, Medes, from a similar sort of area, more western, similar. I don't know for sure if they had a different language, but from this context here, from this text, it seems that they definitely did. And Elamites, who were a bit more south, I think, sort of nearly in that Syria sort of area. I'm not too sure on that one though. Residents of Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, fancy sounding Greek word, actually just means the land between two rivers. Potamos River, also why you got hippopotamus, the river horse. And Mesopotamia, like Meso in the middle. So it's sort of this here. You've got the Tigris and the Euphrates, two great rivers, and the land in between them here is what's known as Mesopotamia. So that also makes me realize that I am not in the right spot for Parthia. They're probably more northwestern out here than Parthians and the Medes, more around there. But yeah, this is sort of modern Iraq, and over here more modern Iran is where these two nations are now. Very different people groups though to the later sort of Arab culture that would arise. But if you know anything about the sort of later Persian empires, those first two especially, and the Elamites were formed of that. Mesopotamia became part of that. It was a home to Babylon and Assyria before it. Judea, that's where they are now. Jerusalem. So that little region there near the Dead Sea. You've got Cappadocia, which is up here in modern Turkey. So this central region, northeast for Turkey, I suppose, next to Armenia. So a large area. Had the ethnics of Turkey is quite difficult. It had a lot of movement through it, a lot of different people groups, some ancient, some not, a lot of Greek colonies around, a lot of horse tribes coming from up north in the Sarmate region here, the modern Ukraine and Russia. They'd come down from that side and from the west, not the west, the east. So a lot of change here. I don't actually know what Cappadocia looks like at this point. But it's a very melting pot sort of culture, Turkish region, especially at this point. Then you have Pontus, which is the other side of Turkey. It was sort of a Hellenized, so they had a Greek culture from Hellas, Greece. Greek culture and but they were sort of native Turks, more Middle Eastern people. So here you have it, Bithynia and Et Pontus, which Bithynia and Pontus, it's up in this north region on the coast, sort of a lot of trading cities on the Black Sea. Then you have Asia is sort of the more southern one there. Similar thing again, a lot of these cities are Greek cities. In the center you have more sort of ethnic Turkish cities, more Middle Eastern peoples, and I suppose most of the Celtic people, because you even have Celtic peoples coming through here, coming from over in from well over into the German territory, travelling through the sort of Dacian lands up here near modern Romania and so forth, and then down to Turkey, eventually falling Galatia, which, as I've talked about before, named after the Gauls, which is a Roman name for the Celtic peoples. They were pretty much everywhere. But anyway, point being, Turkey, big melting pot culture. Phrygia and Pamphylia, they are also around in Turkey. So the many mentions you can see here also sort of driving home that melting pot point. Egypt, that's to the south here. It's probably one a lot of you will recognize. Nile, Egypt there. Actually could be a lot of Greeks and Celts among this group as well as Jews and many other people. Egypt was also pretty mixed, as well as Africans, of course. Parts of Libya, so to the west of Egypt, and Kyrene, also to the west of Egypt. You'd also have some more Middle Eastern people sort of through here, because the Carthaginians and the Phoenicians, you know, those, they had also put a lot of colonies through here. So basically I like people and like talking about all the different culture groups. But the gist of this passage is you have people from a lot of different tribes, a lot of different cultures, a lot of different languages. They're all Jews, and it makes sure to say God-fearing Jews. So probably referencing that not all of them would be ethnic Jews. It's either referencing the sort of the so-called God-fearers who were... Oh, I better switch back to my passage. The God-fearers who were Gentiles, so non-Jewish, non-ethnically Jewish peoples who believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. Or it could just be driving home the point that these are also believing Jews, not just cultural, though it's probably more the former given the massive amount of cultures and languages present here. A lot of Jews would have themselves known Hebrew. Oh, you've even got Rome. I forgot to mention Rome. Italy, that's probably the most one you'll know. I don't think my cursor's showing up, so that sucks. I might have to see what I can do about that for next time. Crete is this island in the center here near Greece, labeled as Achaia here, and Macedonia. And Arabia is sort of south of Judea, down there. Lots of countries, modern Saudi Arabia, you got Yemen, and various other things down there. So all these people see this great sound and then hear these small town Israelites talking in their languages, and they wonder what this means. And some just think everyone's drunk because they're super skeptical. Because people in the Bible are still people. And they react like people do. Some think, wow, this is amazing. Others think, this can't be happening. But anyway, we'll get on to the rest of the passage next time. See you all probably tomorrow with the rest of this passage.